What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today we'll be going over the running backs I would be trading for and away this week. You can see a complete list of players that I'm trading for and away, along with my rest of season rankings, so you can try to do the best trades, all on our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. So we will get into the running backs I'm trading for and away in a second, but first, of course, have to start things off as usual. It's time of the day. Yesterday's stat was through Sunday. Just 5 running backs had at least 20 targets. Najee Harris, DeAndre Swift, Cordero Patterson, Chase Edmonds. I asked you who the fifth was. The answer, that's like Jeremy McNichols. Brian Paramos was the first to get that right on YouTube, and at Jamie Reed 13 was the first to get that right on Twitter. Today's stat. Darren Waller leads all tight ends in percent of team air yards, but who ranks second among tight ends? All right, who we selling this week? Last week we talked about Tyson Williams, CEH, Damian Harris, and then Alexander Madison, assuming that you were able to do a deal with the Dalvin Cook owner, just basically offering them the security of having Alexander Madison if something else were to happen to Dalvin Cook, and you get some sort of premium for that. I stand by all of these as sells again. Most of them, though, dropped in value, so it's a little bit more difficult now. The one that has not dropped in value is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But again, I think that he's a sell high again this week. He does have 100 rushing yards back-to-back weeks, a receiving touchdown in each, so really good games back-to-back weeks. But his routes run were at a season low. His snaps dropped for the 3rd consecutive week. They've dropped every single week since week 1, just over 50% this last week. And he, again, lost goal line work to Darrell Williams. The underlying usage is just the main problem with Clyde. The total yardage, the touchdowns, they all look to be there, but he's losing snaps. He's dropping in routes run. He's losing snaps near the goal line where he's going to get these rushing touchdowns, and just like the passing volume is still not there. So I'm not in love with him this season. I have him more as a low-end running back too. I know you can get more for him in the trade market, and so I would do that. Some new names, though. We'll start off with Mike Davis. He was just tanked and listed as an avoid in our draft ranking, so I doubt many of you watching this have him. But if you do, I'm honestly pretty worried about him. I mentioned last week how he was one of only a few running backs on the season that had at least 15 touches in every single one of the first 3 weeks, and then he had 15 touches again on Sunday. So he's getting volume, right? And any running back getting 15 touches every week is viable. But the exact reasons why we faded him this summer are coming true, and they really started coming true last week, and I'm very fearful of his value moving forward. He has been incredibly inefficient, like we talked about. He was very inefficient last season. You can't think that a year later going to a worse running offense is going to make him more efficient, right? We had to know he was going to average in that 3 yards per carry range. So that's like going to continue. He's not going to be good on the ground. But we were excited maybe about the potential of his receiving volume. And I cautioned, they have other running backs. They have other players that they don't need to give Mike Davis, who in himself is not all that talented. He was great last season in fantasy because he was getting a ton of touches. But he himself is not a fantastic running back, so they're not obligated to give them like a billion touches. Cordero Patterson has been really, really good. He's been efficient. They're not taking volume away from Patterson and giving it to Mike Davis. And now we have this new thing. We had Gallman join the team earlier in the season. He hadn't been playing. He starts playing this week. And so if you look forward, they're probably going to expand Patterson's role. And they're going to start expanding Gallman's role, because I've talked about this offseason. Like I think Gallman is like an underrated running back. I think he's like a quality back. All of that's a negative for Mike Davis. And even given what he has right now, it's not all that great. But he's got 15 touches in 4 consecutive weeks. You might be able to get something for him in the trade market because he scored the touchdown. He's getting these touches. But I don't like him long term. I think he's got a very, very scary floor coming up. Do have him as running back 34 rest of the season, and I would look to move on from him before they expand Peterson's role and before they start using Gallman more. Another running back I trade away is Chris Carson. Now, I mentioned him in last week's running back start sits video, basically saying you should probably be starting him. I thought he was a good start last week, but I wanted to watch the usage because he dipped 2 weeks ago, like into week 3, and I was saying like if it dipped again or if it stayed low, I'm going to be concerned. Fast forward to this week, and well, I'm concerned, right? He only has 3 targets over the last 3 weeks, only 6 total targets on the season. He has been well below a 50% snap share in back-to-back weeks. 2 weeks ago, it was because Travis Homer was taking passing down snaps. Then this last week, it's Alex Collins getting 12 touches in a game that was close, right? This wasn't just some huge blowout, and it was like blowout run that Collins was getting. If you look at the next 3 weeks, he's got Rams, he's got Steelers, he's got Saints, all really good defenses. So, like, I'm not 100% sure. I feel like maybe we're going to find out some story as to why this is happening. But it doesn't seem to be injury related. Like, if it was injury related and he's just going to heal and get back all this workload, I'd be like, okay, maybe we're buying low on him. But they're clearly rotating in other backs, not using him in the receiving game. And that hurts, right? And I think he has enough name value. He's had enough production this season to where you can still get like relatively close to what it costs you to acquire him in the draft. And since I just don't understand what Seattle is doing, I would prefer to just move on from him, get someone else who's close to him in the rest of the season rankings, because I don't like having this dip in receiving volume and having like Travis Homer and Alex Collins, not good running backs, mixing in significant portions. I mean, that doesn't bode well for Carson rest of season. So I would look to trade him if you can. Another running back I'd be fine trading away is Ezekiel Elliott. And I know that's a big one, so I want to be very clear here. We are not giving away Zeke. We are not saying, oh, have to get rid of him this week. I'm okay trading Zeke away if someone's very excited about what they've seen. They think the old Zeke is just 100% back, going to get monster volume every week, and they're willing to pay a very, very high price tag for him. Then I am okay dealing him away. But you should only get a deal done like if you're getting a lot in return, and preferably if you're weak at another spot. Like maybe you're just getting crushed at the tight end position, and someone's willing to do, say, like Waller plus another like okay, like pretty decent, like a running back you'd probably be starting in place of Zeke, packaging both of them together for Zeke, I'd be fine with that. Maybe you busted a wide receiver. You want to do something like Ridley plus a starting running back for Zeke. Those are the deals I'd probably do, is if you really do have him as your headliner, but like you need help at other spots. This is one scenario. I always want to be doing the upgrading, but this is one spot where I think you could probably get 2 pretty solid pieces for Zeke. And if it helps you in both of those areas, or at least really helps you in one of those areas, then I do it. He's coming off back-to-back really, really strong games. And he's looked fantastic. Like, I am not saying that Zeke is bad. He's looked really good in back-to-back weeks. And the production has been there, the volume has been there. So you're like, why should we trade him away then if he's been really good? It's really just because all those same concerns from weeks 1 and 2, like they haven't gone away, right? It's not like they cut Tony Pollard, or Tony Pollard is hurt, Tony Pollard's not going to play, and now it's all Zeke, right? If that were the case, we're not trading away Zeke. He's going to be like dominant top 5. But they've had incredibly favorable game scripts in back-to-back weeks in week 3 and week 4. But Pollard is still going to be getting his scheme 10 to 15 touches each week. And that's fine when they have these last 2 games where they're like winning by multiple scores, or I think it was like 8 last week, but they're winning by multiple scores and they're up for most of the game and the running backs are combining for over 30 touches. But Dak has only thrown the ball 27, 26, and 22 times in the last, or since week 2, so I guess in the last 3 weeks, while Lamb has 5 receptions for 79 yards in weeks 3 and 4 combined. Like, this is still a dominant passing attack that has just been crushing on the ground recently. But eventually, they're going to win games a little bit closer. They're going to lose some games, and they're not going to be winning it with their running game. They're going to be winning games with their passing game. And when they finally get back to throwing the ball a lot, it's going to hurt Zeke, since he only has 8 total targets on the season. He's tied with Salvin Ahmed and Damian Harris for 42nd among running backs. So he's still going to be good. He's still going to score touchdowns. He's going to be good in fantasy. But he's had 2 spiked weeks in a row, and this team is not going to run the ball as much as they have in the last 2 weeks. And Tony Pollard is still there, taking touches away, taking drives away from Zeke. So same issues to start the season, weeks 1 and 2, but his value in the trade market has skyrocketed. So if the issues are the same and his value is way higher, maybe this is an opportunity to sell if you want to. But again, not giving him away. He's still really good in fantasy. On to some buy lows. Last week we talked about Jonathan Taylor, Dave Montgomery, Miles Sanders, Elijah Mitchell, and Michael Carter. Taylor is a little bit tough to trade for right now since he had a big game, but I still really like his long-term production. And so if the owner of Jonathan Taylor is out there and they're trying to use this as an opportunity to sell him, I'd still be fine like acquiring Jonathan Taylor right now because I like his long-term value. And also the Marlon Mack thing. I think that basically what's going to happen there is they're clearly trying to trade Marlon Mack, and maybe they're like trying to give him touches right now so that they have someone that wants him in the trade market, but they want to trade him away. And I think once the trade deadline passes, if they haven't gotten a deal done, they're going to shift to Jonathan Taylor. But I think right now, like they had him as a healthy scratch because they're trying to trade him away, and then nothing happened. And so like, okay, maybe we need to like give him some touches to show people he's like fine from the Achilles injury. Like I think they're just trying to figure out what to do there, but they're clearly not like to close the season going to be featuring Marlon Mack. Right, he's not going to be part of the game plan once the trade deadline passes if you're not on the team, and they want to trade him before that happens. And so I still long-term end the season, I really think Jonathan Taylor is going to close very, very strong, and so I want him on my team. But again, tougher to trade for him now. Montgomery, he obviously like crushed last week, but then now he's going to miss, I think I said 4 to 5 weeks with the injury, so that's kind of unfortunate. You're obviously not trading for someone unless someone like needs to win now. That's actually a possibility. If the Montgomery owner is like 1-3, 0-4, has to win now, going to miss him for a long time, you might be able to get him for really, really cheap. So that's still an option, but he's coming off a huge game, so it's not going to be easy. I stand behind Mitchell and Carter being really good options if you're like balling on a budget, right? And it's you want a running back upgrade, but you simply cannot afford any of the studs, any running back twos. These are guys who I think's value is going to increase moving forward, and so I think they'd be good trade targets. The one that I no longer agree with is Miles Sanders. I am pretty surprised with his usage, honestly. Like the targets have been decent. He's got 11 receptions on the season. That's tied for 23rd among running backs. That's like pretty good. But he has 9 carries the last 2 weeks. And I think a lot of that is game script related. The Eagles knew in both games they were not going to win if they ran the ball. So good on them for realizing that and trying to win the game, trying to move the ball through the air. They didn't end up doing it, but they at least tried to, which is more than you can say for a lot of teams. But even in these games, like Kenneth Gainwell has played a ton, and he's looked really good. This is in a situation where he's getting a ton of snaps and targets and stuff, and he looks bad. Like, he looks good. And the team is being rewarded for playing him because he's playing well. I don't think Gainwell is going to overtake Sanders as the early down back, but they're going to use him on passing downs, not all passing downs, but they're going to use him on a lot of passing downs, and that really caps the upside of Sanders. And given that, again, he's looked good, I don't expect them to all of a sudden start going away from Gainwell. Like, if he looked bad, maybe we can say, oh, he's looked bad, Sanders' role will increase. I don't think that's going to happen because Gainwell has looked good. So Gainwell is definitely someone I want on my bench because he's so clearly the second guy that if Sanders ever did go down, I don't know if he'd be featured because I think they would still use other running backs, but he'd have a huge role and he'd be like someone we're starting every single week. I think in full PPR, you can start considering him in deeper formats. But for Miles Sanders, it's like the upside isn't what we thought it was, especially in these games where they're not winning. So I would be fine if someone was willing to give you like close to what you gave up for him in like draft capital in the draft, like close to that value. Yeah, I'd be willing to move on because this is definitely concerning. So that's an update on the last week, but who am I adding to the buy low list this week? We'll start off with DeAndre Swift. He was talked up last week by the coaching staff saying they're going to expand his role. And so, of course, he ties week 2 for his lowest touch total of the season. But despite the down game, he tied his career high with a 73% snap share. He had 6 targets compared to 0 for Williams. And he didn't end up finding the end zone, but he had an end zone target, which is still really nice to see for running back. Some people are definitely going to be concerned with Swift since there was a lot of hype going into last week saying, hey, he's been crushing it. We're going to give him more of a workload. Like, we were thinking, is he going to be featured? Like, is he going to have like 15 carries and like 7, 8 targets, and he's going to be a running back 1 every single week, then he busts. And so people might be feeling down on him, willing to maybe part with him for a little bit less. But I still view him as a running back 1 rest of the season. I still think he's a weekly must start. I have him as the running back 10, so I think he's a top 10 running back rest of the season. Elite pass game usage. Touchdown upside is high, even on a bad offense, because he's used so much in the red zone. And we know the talent is there. So I would still be looking at him as running back 1. And if someone's willing to part with him for less than that, do it. Another running back I trade for is Javonte Williams. He's also coming off a pretty bad game from a fantasy perspective. He only gained 59 yards on 10 touches, so he's still efficient, but he only had 10 touches, so you're going to probably have a down game as a running back if a lot of those aren't coming through the air. But anyone who watched that run has to be convinced at this point that the talent is there for Williams. And the team has been extremely vocal about how much they love him, how much they're gonna be using him this season, how much confidence they have in him. And after trading up to get him in the early second round, that just makes a ton of sense, right? It's also exciting to see that he's got 7 targets these last 2 weeks, and the dip in carries is not concerning to me because that game script was terrible and they didn't have the ball all that much, and so it's tough to get a lot of carries if you don't have the ball, right? He was still splitting the touches with Melvin Gordon, which we don't love to see. But what are you going to expect, right? Are you expecting him to come into the season and just dominate the carries from the start? No. Melvin Gordon is, of course, going to still get a workload. I think to close the season is something I talked about in the summer. I think I talked about him basically he's probably going to be a good buy low because people are going to see the split and be concerned. But I think as the season moves along, he's going to slowly take more and more of a workload away from Melvin Gordon. And those are the guys we want. Have him as a running back 27 rest of season right now. And I think he's a very safe trade target. We know for a fact that the role is not going away. So he's not getting less of a role than he has right now. This is basically baseline what he's going to have. It's probably his floor for production. We know he's talented. He can catch. The team loves him. And it's just there's a lot of signs pointing to future usage for him. And it's not like he's going to cost you a ton, right? I know it can be really difficult to pull off trades for high-end running backs since there are so few of them and everyone values them highly. But Williams is a really nice option to fill in that running back 2 spot right now and capture upside later in the season. Because I think it is well within his range of outcomes to be getting 65 to 70% of the total usage down the stretch. And he's a featured running back if Gordon ever missed time. So since, again, he's been performing close to his floor in terms of volume to start the season, hasn't been dominating with touchdowns, I think that to close the season, he's going to be much more valuable. So now is the time to trade for him. Another great option if you're not looking to break the bank, because most of you, that's the case, right? We're not trying to always trade for a running back 1. Sometimes you just need a little depth. You need that running back 2 to be secure. How about Zack Moss? He appeared in the video last week in a section that was here's some information about a split. Not 100% sure what to do with this, but here's some information basically. But I think now I'm at the point where I'm good trading for him, especially since, I don't think the market as a whole values him super high. I've, given my take on him probably 2 or 3 times now already, and it hasn't changed. So we don't need to waste anyone's time here giving a super long take. But as a reminder, the touches are capped. While Moss and Singletary are both healthy, neither one of them is getting 1 billion touches, right? They're going to roughly split total touches. But Moss has more value because he's the one getting the high value touches. These touches close to the end zone, and because of that, his touchdown upside is higher. And when you pair that with being on Buffalo, right? He's not on a terrible offense. He's on the Buffalo Bills, one of the highest scoring teams in the NFL. The overall touchdown upside among all running backs is also high. So more upside than his teammate, Singletary, but also upside at the running back position because not a ton of running backs have as much touchdown upside as Moss, especially for what it would cost you to acquire him. Now, I'm not sending the farm for Moss, but I have him as a running back 29 rest of season. I think that's a really solid spot for him. He's someone that you can go after if you want RB0, anchor running back, or if you just had injuries, you just need a cheaper running back 2 with some upside. Or maybe, you've got that running back 2. But that's really it. You maybe only have 2 running backs and you really want like a quality third piece if there's injuries, if there's bye weeks, because those are going to be coming up. I think that in those situations, Moss is someone I'd look to target because I know he's coming off like 2 decent games, but he hasn't crushed it. And I think there's a lot of people who maybe picked him up off free agency, maybe got him late. They're just looking to sell high right now. Maybe they don't realize the upside. They don't realize this production is here to stay. And so I'd be looking to acquire him. So that'll do it for the week 4 running back trade targets video. I'll be posting more names on the website. So if you want to see a larger list of running backs I would trade for and away, you can check that out as well. And I guess you can look at other positions too. And you can always look at the rest of season rankings to get even more trade ideas. Obviously, we're trying to trade for players who are higher in their season rankings. And remember to follow me on TikTok. I'll be posting content over there that does not go up on YouTube. So if you want to see more free content, then there's a link to that in the description box down below. That, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, how about hitting that like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.